Strength and conditioning and resistance training program for equestrian polo athletes. Introduction to the polo, individual and polo. So male athlete age 28, handicap of 6, which indicates he is high fitness level. Equestrian polo is a sport that has a high demand of physical and mental fitness. The foundation and director of polo fitness trainer said polo is a sport that includes whole body strength, balance and flexibility. The paper on show jumpers and event racing found riders clearly require at least some kind of muscular strength, endurance and flexibility for coordination and postural stabilisation. There is little evidence in studies done on equestrian polo players, however there have been more on riding events where evidence can be based on. So the introduction of high rep, low load cluster resistance training program. To improve an athlete's overall strength and muscular endurance, the athlete has had a sprained riding muscle in the ergonomial region in the past. By using cluster sets and low load will reduce the injury risk in the future. I'll use high reps to improve muscular endurance, pyramid progression of load, slowly increasing the strength, high rep and low load reduce injury risk, cluster training and use of Olympic lifting. So the method overview. I'll use 10 exercises per session and the use of one Olympic lifting variation each session. Each exercise performed at 3 sets for the first 4 weeks, then increased to 4 sets. I'll use a standard 5/1 of 15 total reps broken into 5 cluster sets of 1 for the first 4 weeks, then increase to ascending 5/1 of 15 total reps broken into 5 cluster sets of 1 for the last 4 weeks. Rest between each cluster at 15 seconds for the first 4 weeks, then decrease to 5 seconds rest between each cluster. Session will be repeated 3 times a week. The goal is for the athlete to increase weight lifted by 1 kg each week and then decrease rest period at 2 seconds after every 2 weeks. After first 3 weeks, adaptations begin, so 2 new exercises get introduced to increase intensity. Start low to have room for large improvement and adaptations. So we'll compare muscular endurance resistance training in comparison to maximal strength resistance training. The muscular endurance will be 3 to 4 sets per exercise, and the maximal strength, there's a pyramid set of 3 to 5 sets per exercise. The reps, there's a large rep base in the muscular endurance, low rep base in the maximal strength. The load is high in maximal strength and low to moderate in muscular endurance. The rest period is a lot shorter in the muscular endurance training compared to the maximal strength training. The velocity of exercises are both got high tempo. Variations are 10 different exercises in the muscular endurance and 8 exercises in maximal. The frequency of the endurance resistant training is 2 to 3 days per week, compared to the maximal strength is 4 to 5 days per week. Discussion of the different training sessions. Training load and volume have shown to affect hormonal, neural and hypertrophic response and adaptations to resistance training. Heavy loads are used if the goal is power and maximal strength of 1 to 3 RM, and low loads are for muscular endurance, 8 to 15 RM. Targeting muscular strength and hypertrophy are best served by moderate to heavy loads and moderate volumes of 3 to 4 sets per exercise, approximately twice the treatment effect of a single set when performing 4. The rest period will relate to the load lifted. Programs for max strength should be 3 to 5 minutes. When the goal is muscular endurance, rest periods should be 30 to 60 seconds long. A faster velocity results in a greater strength gain of 39%, so the moderate 2-2 and the fast 1-1 velocities have shown to maximise hormone response. However, faster velocities may increase the probability of injury risk. The rest period between sessions vary depending on intensity to allow the muscles to recover. Maximised strength gains lifters will perform 5 to 7 days. However, the athlete is looking to gaining muscular endurance, and as a farmer, which is time consuming, can only do the training 3 times a week. The use of resistance training to enhance muscular fitness. Resistance training demonstrates that it's an effective method to improve neuromuscular function. The effectiveness of a resistance training program to achieve a specific training outcome depends on several acute program variables. The concept of progressive overload has become the foundation of resistance training program design. The work described as the classic program variables of load, frequency, duration, and intensity, which has been the cornerstone to achieve such overload. Low load resistance training is used to increase muscular endurance. Strength and power have been shown to be vital characteristics with relations to golfing performance, and training interventions have demonstrated their effectiveness as means of performance enhancement. As golf, polo also has the same large arm movement swing, and power is created from the body. In this sense, polo requires strength, which can be done by using resistance training methods. The use of high rep cluster training and low load. One new method of introducing training variations while maximising the velocity and power output of the training exercise is the utilisation of a cluster set configuration. A cluster set employs a 15 to 45 second rest period between each repetition. Varying the individual repetition load patterns contained in the set, generally 2 global inter-repetitions loading patterns can be used, the undulating and the ascending cluster set. The program contains ascending clusters configuration after the first 4 weeks of standard cluster sets. The ascending cluster set utilizes increase in resistance with each successive repetition across the set. The addition of short inter-repetition rest intervals would therefore offset the fatigue-induced reductions in performance by allowing the athlete to partially recover between each repetition contained in the set. The strength endurance phase of periodized training plan. The main goal for training is to induce and increase working capacity while decreasing body fat and increasing lean body mass. The cluster set configuration offers a unique strategy for maintaining technical proficiency while developing the working capacity, which is targeted by high repetition scheme training. The employment of a short rest interval of 5 to 15 seconds between each repetition of the set will allow the partial recovery, allowing the athlete to maximize the quality of each repetition in the set. The use of cluster configuration strategy during the strength, endurance, or general preparation phase of a periodized training plan allows the development of power endurance, since many sports, especially team sports such as football and rugby, require the ability to repetitively produce high power outputs. The capacity to maximize power endurance would be considered an important training goal. The ability to modify the cluster set structure gives us the ability to target specific physiological and performance characteristics. Low load is nevertheless for muscular endurance-based program due to training the smaller muscles and to develop the muscle fibers to go on longer rather than for short, powerful movements. Low load will also reduce injury risk on the athlete. Use of Olympic lifting. Weightlifting performance is related to kinematic and kinetic patterns of hip and knee joints. Greater relative lift mass appears to be associated with a steady trunk position during the first pull, relatively small hip motion during the second knee bend transition, and rapid hip extension during the second pull. Together, these results indicate that weightlifting performance relies on optimal hip and trunk motion, along with knee extensor muscle function during the pull phases. Emphasis should be placed on body speed rather than barbell load when performing these drills. If barbell load is to be increased, it should be done in small weight increments. Technicality of weightlifting movement is important that athletes reinforce correct movement patterns to receive the full benefit of the performance exercise and decrease injury risk. Multi-joint exercises are more neural demanding and generally regarded most effective for increasing overall muscular strength. These points all relate into the use of trunk, hip and knee in polo players. When a player produces power from the knee and hip to twist the trunk to take a full swing at the ball, it involves a full extension of the left hip joint to produce the power through the trunk into the right shoulder. The extension comes from the knee and hip to lift the trunk out of the saddle. So this slide shows the images of the averages of the hip, knee and ankle joint angles and moment from Olympic lifting. There is no evidence of a polo player joint angles and taking a swing at the ball. However, the observations there is a large angle and moment performed in the hip, knee and ankle joint with moments of the trunk. To monitor and test the athlete, I would suggest using similar tests that have been used on jockeys. As polo, although the horses are the main athlete, the job of the rider is also very demanding and requires a specific set of physical attributes. I would test the flexibility, leg strength, upper body test, and the trunk stability. I would test the athlete at the start of the program, after 4 weeks, and at the end. The endurance test is also an important attribute to polo athletes. However, it would not be testing the progress of my program. The rationale of the test. Polo is a team sport such as basketball. There is a discussion of aerobic and anaerobic fitness. There is similar discussion within polo. Playing polo, athletes' heart rates can reach up to 70 to 80% of most of the game, similarly to basketball. It has a lot of constant high intensity work for 4 to 6 chukkers of 7.5 minutes. That is 45 minutes of high intense work with 3 minutes rest between each chukker. The low body squat and hold test is used due to riders needing strength in the legs to direct the horse and protect the rider from falling when unbalanced. The trunk is there to support the body and stabilise the rider's seat when leaning to hit a ball or when being hit by another horse in a ride-off to stay balanced. The plank position and hold will test the trunk strength, and the wobbly cushion will test the rider's overall balance. The upper body strength is used firstly in the left shoulder, as it's the left arm that holds the horse in position with very little movement to direct the horse. And then the right arm is holding and swinging the mallet, which is about 230 grams. The physiological adaptations of the program. It will improve the neuromuscular function, management and prevention of several pathological conditions, effect of magnitude of neuromuscular adaptations, increase in muscular size, increase in muscle fibers and size, increase in hypertrophy, changes in contractile characteristics, increased connective tissue and muscle. There will be a transition between fibre subtypes, 11A and 11B, might follow energy requirements, and this may present a positive strength adaptation. Neural adaptations at the early stage of the program, while hypertrophic response begin to occur at the later stages of the training program. The fatigue generated during cluster sets may manifest itself as neuromuscular system fatigue or by accumulation of metabolic fatigue, which will improve performance capacity. Restoration of energy in 15 seconds can result in a restoration of half of the fatigue-induced forced decrement, returning the force-generated capacity to 2.3% of its total capacity as a result of particular replenishment of refill substrates. Reduction in fatigue will reduce injury risk. To conclude, the program could improve the performance and fitness of the athletes hugely by improving their muscular endurance, muscular strength, and some aspects of power. The athlete has reached the age of 30 and still playing high levels of polo with history of muscle injury. At this stage, the player has a high risk of injury. The use of resistance training to build hypertrophy and muscular endurance using cluster sets and low load will increase the skeletal muscle and bone health, build muscle fibers, and reduce the injury risk.